They told me a black woman could not be a millionaire in this country. They told me, with their silence, with their locked doors, with the way they looked through me like I wasn't standing right in front of them. That was fine. I wasn't trying to convince them. I was too busy becoming one. I was born on a cotton plantation in Delta, Louisiana, December 23rd, 1867. My parents had only been free for 2 years when I came into this world. 2 years. That's how close I was to being born into slavery. I never knew life without labor. I never knew life without fear sitting quietly in the corner of every room. By the time I was 7 years old, both of my parents were gone. Yellow fever moved through our county like a thief and took everything. My sister took me in and we crossed into Mississippi. I picked cotton in fields that still carried the weight of the decades before me. I was a child, but nobody in that world cared about what I was. They only cared about what I could produce. At 14, I married a man named Moses McWilliams. Not out of love, out of necessity, out of desperation for something that felt like safety. He died when I was 20. And suddenly, I was a young widow with a baby daughter, a pair of worn hands, and a world that had never once considered giving me a head start. I packed what little I owned and moved to St. Louis. I became a laundress. I washed other people's clothes for $1.50 a day. Every morning, I dragged myself to those steaming vats. Every evening, I came home to my daughter, Alelia, and I told her things were going to change. I told her that for 17 years. 17 years of saying it. 17 years of not yet knowing how. Then my hair started to fall out. Not gradually, in clumps. I would run my hand across my scalp and come away holding pieces of myself. For a black woman in America at the turn of that century, your hair was tied to your dignity in ways that are hard to explain to someone who hasn't lived it. I tried every product I could find, every tonic, every ointment, every promise in a bottle. Nothing worked. I had survived so much, and yet I had never felt so erased. I was invisible, and I was disappearing one strand at a time. There is a particular kind of despair that doesn't come from dramatic tragedy. It comes from quiet, daily humiliation. That was where I lived. Then something shifted. I don't have a clean answer for what happened next. What I know is that desperation, when you push it hard enough, can sometimes turn into clarity. I began studying the scalp. I began experimenting in my own kitchen, on my own head. I mixed, adjusted, and tried again. And then, slowly, impossibly, my hair began to grow back. I stood at that mirror and I understood something no textbook could have taught me. If this happened to me, it was happening to thousands of women across this country. Women who were suffering quietly. Women who had never once had anyone walk up to their door with a solution built specifically for them. That was my moment. Not a grand revelation, just a woman in a kitchen, looking in a mirror, realizing that her own problem was also her purpose. I had no laboratory. I had a stove and a daughter who believed in me. I mixed my first batch of Madam Walker's wonderful hair grower in 1905 and started selling it door to door in Denver, Colorado. Women turned me away. I knocked on the next door. I stood in church basements after Sunday service with a comb and a demonstration and a story that was entirely my own. I moved to Pittsburgh, then to Indianapolis. I kept moving because every city held women who looked the way I used to look in that mirror. Ashamed, exhausted, told that their beauty was not worthy of care. I started training other women to sell alongside me. Black women who had been shut out of every professional door in Jim Crow America. I didn't just hand them a product. I handed them a system, a commission, a business of their own. And in return, they gave me something I hadn't planned for. They gave me reach. They gave me a movement dressed up as a sales force. Every door they knocked on, I had knocked on first in spirit. I told them what I knew to be true. The only difference between where you are and where you want to be is the door you refuse to stop knocking on. By 1910, I had built a manufacturing facility in Indianapolis, an actual factory with employees, Black men and women earning honest wages under my roof. I'll never forget standing on that factory floor for the first time and letting myself feel it. I thought about the cotton fields, the laundry vats, Every door in Denver that almost didn't open. I thought about my mother and my father, who died never knowing what freedom could truly feel like. My walker agents were spreading across the country, eventually more than 20,000 women operating their own independent businesses under the Walker brand. 20,000! I was not just selling hair care. I was manufacturing economic freedom for women who had been told their entire lives that such a thing was not for them. I became the first self-made female millionaire in America. The newspapers weren't sure what to make of that. A Black woman, born on a plantation, 2 years after slavery, a millionaire. I built a mansion on the Hudson River, Villa Lawaro. I sat in rooms with activists and artists who had once been people I could only read about. I gave money to the NAACP. I funded anti-lynching campaigns when speaking about them publicly was itself an act of courage. I gave scholarships to young people who reminded me of a little girl picking cotton barefoot in Mississippi. I kept building because I understood that wealth without purpose is just a number, and purpose was always the point. People have always wanted to know what I was truly after. What drove a woman with no inheritance, no education, no patron, and no permission through every closed door and every quiet dismissal to keep going? The answer is not complicated. I was not after money. I was after what money could make possible. I was after the look on a woman's face the moment she understood she did not need anyone's approval to own her own life. I was after freedom. Not the kind handed to you, but the kind you build with your own 2 hands, door by door, day by day. I did not wait for the world to become fair. I built something inside of it anyway. My name is Madam C.J. Walker, and everything they said was impossible, I made it real.